Hey YouTube, welcome to my channel. Alright, I know I usually do music videos, but I'm also a huge Star Wars fan. And I wanted to throw this theory at you guys because I've been trying to figure out where this story is going. And I know that there's a lot of theories about Rey, if she's a Kenobi, if she's Palpatine's clone and things like that. But I personally still believe she's a Skywalker. However, in doing a little bit more observation and research, I've determined with myself that she's a Skywalker, but not in the sense that most would think she was a Skywalker. And I'm going to break that down because I found something in one of the trailers that kind of shed some more light on her being a Skywalker that a lot of people seem to have forgotten about. So let me bring up my notes and we will get started. Before we do, let me say that there will be probably major potential spoilers ahead. So if you really don't want to know any of this, if you don't want to have anything spoiled just in case this turns out to be true, then you should stop the video now, because there's a lot of evidence here that there's more to Rey than meets the eye. So, last chance, spoilers ahead. Cut it off. Okay, you still with me? Alright, guess you want to hear it. So here we go. Alright, so let's go all the way back to the very first trailer. Alright. The very first trailer, not the first, it was the first teaser. It wasn't the first full trailer, it was just a teaser, right? So, in that trailer, Luke says to somebody, "The Force is strong in my family. I have it, my father has it, my sister has it, and you have that power too." Okay, so Luke didn't mention this in the movie because Luke didn't speak in The Force Awakens at all. So it's like we can only assume he was talking to Rey. So because that's the case, and she's the hero of the movie primarily, then it stands to reason that he was probably talking to her. So let's look at some things from The Force Awakens a little bit. Hang on, turn this down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so if you look at the crawl for The Force Awakens, it says that Leia is desperate to find her brother, right? And also says Snoke is looking for him too, because if the Last Jedi arises, and they'll call him the Last Jedi, which we know is the name of the next movie, The Last Jedi. But I want to point out that it says Leia is desperately looking for her brother, or she's desperate to find him, which is going to be very important later for anybody who's seen The Force Awakens. Okay, so I'm going to probably jump around a little bit, but bear with me. My overall belief at this point is that Rey is a clone of Leia, which would make her a Skywalker, but not in the way that we think. She's not Han and Leia's daughter. She's not Luke's daughter, but I do believe she's a clone of Leia. And again, here's some of the evidence. You can weigh it and determine if you feel the same way. Okay, so the lightsaber called to Rey. The lightsaber is the Skywalker family lightsaber, pretty much. It was Anakin's, then it was Luke's. Okay, then it got lost, then it got found. It called to Rey. She had the Force vision, and I'm really going to get into that in a minute. So she had the Force vision, and the Force awakened, right, in her, and pretty much she started doing all these amazing things. So let's see what I cover here. So okay, so the novel says that both Kylo and Luke knew who she was. Like, Kylo was, his direct words were, "It is you," which I found interesting, because what if he knew of his mother being cloned, or being the host, you know, for the clone, which is Rey? Because if you remember in Attack of the Clones, Jango was the template for the clone army. They needed his DNA to make the clone army. So maybe the same thing happened here with Leia. For whatever reason, she was cloned, and that clone being Rey, got left on Jakku, and from that we see that once the Force awakened in her, that she began to do all these amazing things. So let's talk about some of those amazing things. Now, she'd grown up on Jakku, right? And she was familiar with the Millennium Falcon. She knew it was a piece of junk. She even called it garbage in the movie, But once the action started and they started being chased, then she was able to fly it very well. She said she knew how to pilot, but she did a much better job of that. Certain things she did were definitely by someone who may have been Force sensitive. Okay. As far as her interaction with the Millennium Falcon, she called it garbage. And Princess Leia was always talking down about the Falcon. It was a piece of junk, a bucket of bolts that'll never get us past the blockade. So it's kind of like that carried on with Rey. It was always in need of repair. Even in the movie when they were in transit, they had to do repairs so they wouldn't, crash and burn. So after they escaped from the TIE fighters, she goes to Finn and he's like, wow, that was great. I never seen anything like it. She was like, yeah, you were great too. And it's kind of like she didn't expect to be that good, but all of a sudden she was. And then if you remember too, as soon as they boarded the Falcon, she goes, the guns are down there, and maybe she knew that from spending time with it, but there just seemed a lot of familiarity with the ship. She ran straight for the cockpit. She's turning things on, and she takes off. And you keep in mind too, Leia had never really piloted the Falcon in any of the movies. She kind of handled the co-pilot thing when Lando was flying during Empire Strikes Back, and she sat behind Han a lot and watched him fly. But here we find her familiar with the controls enough to actually fly. Okay, so those are some of the characteristics that Leia had, and I'll cover a few more. Let's jump ahead to when Kylo Ren captured her. Rey puts her in the chair and he wants to torture her, and he's doing that, and she resists. Well, who else resisted the dark side of the Force? Leia, right? When Vader had her captive on the Death Star, the first Death Star, she resisted the mind probe. She resisted him, and she was able to do that because I believe she was a Skywalker and therefore Force sensitive. Well, Rey does the same thing, and she takes it a step further. She resists, and then she turns it back on Kylo and scares the crap out of him. So there's that parallel with Leia too. And let's see here. Let me check my notes again. And of course, the lightsaber comes to her instead of going to Kylo when she calls it. It called to her first. It didn't call to Kylo. When she had the vision, it called out to her specifically. And I'm going to go into the vision next, which is probably going to blow you guys' mind when I point some things out there too. But going back to the fight at the end, the lightsaber came to her, and then she was able to fight off Kylo. And of course, we know when he told her she needed a teacher, and she went into herself and went into the Force and came out and was able to, knock that fight out with no problem. Again, if she's a clone of Leia and the Force awakened in her, unlike it ever did for Leia, maybe Leia was stuck some kind of way and was not able to ever learn the Force. In the old books, she was Force sensitive. She had the bearable Jedi Master. And she became a Jedi after that, but that's all legends now. It's not canon anymore. So technically, Leia never learned the Force. But here we have Rey, who's doing all these parallels to her. And I'm thinking, again, that's because she's a clone. Now, spoilers ahead from here again for The Empire's End for anybody who hasn't read it, so be careful here. Jakku was the source of the final battle between the Empire and the New Republic, the rebellion, which became the New Republic. And Palpatine had an observatory there that he was using. He kept, I believe, Sith artifacts there. He kept a garrison to guard it, which, according to Rey, was there all while she was growing up. And they would not so much scare people away, but they would act crazy so the people didn't technically go anywhere near them. So it's like you got to ask yourself, what were they guarding on Jakku, and was there a cloning facility down there? I really would have to go back and reread the entire book, but I just find it interesting that Palpatine had a facility there. Rey ended up there, and Rey is super powerful with the Force, which, knowing Star Wars like we do, is not any type of coincidence. So let's talk about the Force Vision. So she goes into, she gets called, first of all, down to the basement of Maz Kanata's castle. And then she goes straight to the lightsaber, opens the box, touches the lightsaber, and the vision starts. Now let's look at the vision. The first thing she sees, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to touch every point, but I may not put them in order, so bear with me. But the first thing she sees is the hallway on Bespin, where Luke and Vader were fighting on Cloud City, okay? According to the book, she saw someone in the hall and she began to move toward them. Some believe that was Kylo Ren. Personally, I don't know, since there was no one in the movie. I kind of ignore that without further evidence. But whatever she saw, and she did see something, she began to move towards it. And then, of course, we know the hallway shifts and like rocks fall down and she rolls out of the way. So it's like something being destroyed. And that's one of those things I thought that was important. It's like you got to ask yourself, what's being destroyed? Was it the school where Luke was teaching? Perhaps. You know, she's seeing things that are relevant to really the Skywalker bloodline. So it may have been the school being destroyed. So then I believe that's when she looks up and she sees Luke reaching for R2. And first there's burning and fire and embers and everything. But if you look at that scene closely, it shifts from the burning to rain. So it's fire around R2. Then it's a lot of rain. And the next scene they shift to, of course, is the scene with Kylo and who we believe to be the Knights of Ren in the rain. And there's dead bodies everywhere. And someone goes to attack Rey, and Kylo impales him. And then he begins to walk toward her. And he's holding what some believe is Luke's green lightsaber. So we're thinking, and I'm thinking, you know, we're all Star Wars fans, we're thinking that's a future event that we haven't seen in the movie yet. Some future attack, and there's more to be said there. But anyway, so after that, she hears herself saying no, I believe, and she turns around and herself as a little girl being held by Unkar Plutt, and she's saying no, come back, and he's like, quiet, girl. And it's interesting that in the book, I kind of think it's the story of Rey, or Rey's story, where there's a picture of the family ship, which is that same ship from the movie taking off. And then if you look at the picture, there's a picture of two adults and what looks like a little girl, but it's so far in the distance you can't really tell. So it's possible that whoever was in charge of Rey took off and left in that ship. Who they were, not really sure. I'm starting to believe they weren't her parents per se. They were her caretakers. And I believe that they left her with Unkar Plutt for whatever reason. Maybe they owed him money or something. Because she kind of worked for him, but she kind of didn't. He didn't really bother with her in that much of a negative light. He wasn't overly fond of her, but he wasn't like, I want to murder her or anything. He just was a jerk. So he says quiet, and she looks at the ship again and says no, and then it's the same no that draws her to the basement, actually, if you really go back and listen. So after that, of course, it gets dark, and she hears another voice, I believe, and she's running toward that, and Kylo steps from behind a tree, and that's a foreshadowing of the fight to come, and we know how that ends. And once she backpedals, the vision is over. But there's a couple other things in the vision that I thought were interesting. You hear Luke saying no once he hears Vader's the father, you know, he's like, no, that's from Bespin. You hear Yoda saying how the Force penetrates us and binds us and all that, binds the universe together, and then you hear Obi-Wan say, "Rey, these are your first steps." Okay, so that's the vision, and those are all things again relating to the lightsaber or the Skywalker family, or things that Luke went through, or things that Rey went through. Hang on a second, let me get my notes again. So covered that already. So at the end of everything, when they get back to the Resistance base, Leia hugs Rey, even though they'd never met. Okay. Leia was aware that Finn had a friend that was taken, but she had never met her. But she goes and she hugs her, and it's a really long hug, like, you know, what's going on with that. So R2 and BB-8 then put the map together, and they find out where Luke is. Now, if you remember the opening crawl, Leia was desperate to find her brother, okay? So once the droids were able to put the map together, you would think that Leia would grab Chewie and they're like, let's go, you know, let's go get Luke. But she didn't do that. Rey went. Now, if you look at the scene of Rey leaving, this is one thing I find very important. Because Leia was smiling the whole time, and I believe she gave Rey another hug, and then Rey turns to leave. Leia stops her and says, "May the Force be with you." Again, she's still smiling, as if she knows something. And BB-8, you know, says something, and Rey looks down at him and nods, and then she goes to the ship, and they take off and they head for R2. So once they get there, she leaves Chewie and R2 at the ship, and she climbs all the steps and everything. She sees Luke, he turns around, and according to the novel, he knew who she was too. And when you look at the movie, and you probably look at it after this in a completely different light, but once he sees her, there's like a look of recognition as to, you do exist, and you got my lightsaber, which is full circle for the Skywalker family because it was lost at Bespin. So here it is again in the hands of, again, who I believe to be a clone of his sister. So he's looking, and then the movie ends. So we have to wait to find out what's coming. The only other information I have on this is that if you read the book Bloodlines, spoilers ahead again, sorry about that, there was an instance where everybody found out that Darth Vader was Leia's father. And it kind of created a bunch of problems for her, which is why in the Force Awakens she was the head of the Resistance, which was not a part of the Republic per se, though she had friends in the Republic. So I'm thinking that if there was a reason for her to be cloned or to agree to be cloned, it was so that she could do something maybe later. Maybe she saw what was happening with the new order, the first order. Maybe she saw something and she figured if she'd be able to clone herself as a Skywalker, maybe that person would then come around and do things in the future that maybe she and Luke couldn't accomplish. And of course, after the disappearance of Luke, she probably felt that a lot better. But I find it interesting that she sent Rey to find Luke instead of going herself. Or if indeed Rey is a clone, then she sent herself. She sent the Force powerful version of herself to find her brother, and maybe together as twins they could get this thing together and take the First Order out. So again, I'm brainstorming on all of this stuff. I don't know if it's true. I think a lot of it's plausible. There's too many coincidences in this. So let's see if I missed anything. Okay, so again, at the end of The Force Awakens, when Leia smiled at Rey and said, "May the Force be with you," she did she say that as a greeting, or was she feeling that Rey may have had the Force? Don't know. The movie doesn't specify. Let's see. Oh, she would not have known of Rey's defeat of Kylo Ren. She felt Han's death, but she may not have known of the fight that they had. Again, the movie doesn't specify. So that's pretty much everything I got. As I listened to all of the Rey theories online, there's some really good stuff. Like even the Emperor Palpatine clone thing. That's interesting to me, because she did have instances in the movie where she had the same fighting style as Palpatine. And the Kenobi theory is plausible a little bit too, because of her emulation of some of his things, like the mind trick, the Jedi mind trick. She became really good at that really fast. But then the things like piloting, which was a Skywalker trait, they were supposed to be really great pilots. She was really good at that. So this was the first thing that I found that sort of made sense once I remembered the original trailer, where Luke is specific. The Force runs in his family. So he names family members and then says to Rey, you have that power too. But he doesn't refer to her as a family member per se. But he kind of insinuates that she's a Skywalker, which I think is why so many people believe that. And if she's a Skywalker because she's a clone, then that's going to be one heck of a twist. So I don't know if any of this is true. Just to give you something to think about. But if you have any comments about this, leave them in the comments below. You can share this video with your friends. Share it everywhere. Let's talk about it. Let's debate it. Because celebrations this week, and I know it's going to be a lot of Star Wars speculation going on. We're getting a trailer on Friday, so that should definitely bring some more conversation up, because we actually get to see something, and maybe we can piece some of these things together. So that's about it. That's all I got. Again, if you got any comments, leave them below. Be sure to subscribe and tell your friends about the site, and I hope to talk to you guys about this soon. I'm going to post it, I'm going to share it everywhere, and I ask that you do the same. In the meantime, have a great day, and as always, may the Force be with you.